Rahman Rahim. This is Dr. Naza here. Third year today we will discuss intracellular accumulations. As we have been previously discussing um, uh, cell injuries, reversible and irreversible kind of the cell injuries. So what other mechanisms can occur in a cell, or how a cell can protect itself, or what are different injuries leading to changes in the cells. And we also discussed two modes of cell elimination, that is cell necrosis and cell apoptosis. But how the homeostasis is maintained, and how the normal functions of the cells are disturbed, and they lead to different accumulations inside the cell, which are called intracellular accumulations. These accumulations can be from the internal sources or endogenous sources, and these accumulations can be a result of catabolism or metabolism which is occurring in the cell, and these also can be from the exogenous sources, increased uptake from the exogenous sources, and the external environment also affect and plays a part in the accumulation of accumulations, and disturbs the homeostasis or normal metabolic function of the cell, and normal equilibrium of the environment of the cell is disturbed. So how these accumulations or disorders of homeostasis occur? These occur if there is increased uptake from the exogenous sources. If the body is requiring a component in a smaller quantity, for a simple example, you can understand in a way that the body produces different hormones from the cholesterol, and the fats undergo metabolism and produces cholesterol. But if you are taking fats in your diet, but if there is an increased uptake in the form of junk food or fatty foods, then there is a disordered homeostasis, or if your body metabolism is not able to cope with this increased uptake, it will lead to accumulations. If there is increased endogenous synthesis, because of some disturbance in the metabolic functions, then the increased endogenous synthesis more than the requirement can lead to certain problems. If the uptake is normal and there is normal endogenous synthesis, but there is decreased breakdown or transport from the cell, or the cell is unable to eliminate its products, or there is the quantity of the substance is normal but it is not broken down into normal way, then there is accumulation or disturbed homeostasis. Insolubility of accumulated material inside the cell. If the accumulated material is insoluble or is not taken up by the removal mechanism of the cell, then there can be disordered homeostasis. And so there are four basic reasons: increased uptake from exogenous sources, increased endogenous synthesis, decreased breakdown of the substance, or elimination or transport from the cell is defective, or the insolubility of the accumulated material inside the cell can also cause accumulations. So for example, in a normal cell, if there is abnormal metabolism of, for example, of the fat, then it can lead to a fatty change or fatty liver. If the protein elimination or protein repair mechanism become abnormal because of some abnormality in the chaperones, then the protein folding transport is disturbed, and it leads to accumulation of misfolded proteins inside the cell, and this can cause endoplasmic reticulum stress. Inside the cell, with the help of the enzymes, complex substrates are broken down into soluble products. If this enzyme is lacking, the complex substrate will not be broken down. It will not be converted into the soluble products. And this can lead to accumulation of the complex substance or complex substrate inside the cell. This is because of lack of enzyme inside the cell, which can lead to accumulation or disturbed homeostasis. And the best example to understand this mechanism are the lysosomal storage diseases or glycogen storage diseases because of accumulation of the endogenous materials. Or the cell is taking an indigestible material, then this can be accumulated because the cell is lacking machinery for metabolism and elimination of this particular product. So these are major mechanisms which leads to storage diseases and fatty changes and other type of the abnormalities. Accumulations can be of different types. Types of intracellular accumulations can be in the form of lipids. These can be proteins. A hyaline change occur in the cell. Glycogen can accumulate inside the cell, or either these could be pigments. So lipids, proteins, hyaline change, glycogen accumulation, and pigments can be different accumulations which are found in the cell. Another form is pathological calcification, but this calcification can be intracellular and extracellular. Lipid accumulates inside the cell, and this can be accumulated in the form of usually triglycerides or cholesterol esters. The different forms of the lipid can be stored inside the cell, and these can be triglycerides, cholesterol esters, or phospholipids. One major change, which is because of abnormal accumulation of triglycerides in the parenchymal cells, is steatosis. Steatosis is basically a fatty change. A fatty change or fat accumulation in a non-fatty tissue. Any tissue or organ which parenchyma does not contain fat cells, and this leads to accumulation of the triglycerides. If occurs in that kind of parenchyma, then this change is called steatosis. So abnormal accumulation of triglycerides within parenchymal cells of non-fatty tissue. You already know that parenchyma is basically the functional cells of the organ. Major sites of steatosis include liver, heart, muscle, and kidney. And all these organs, either liver, heart, muscles, and kidney, these are non-fatty tissues, or the parenchyma does not contain fat cells. Only the stroma of these organs can have a few fat cells, or connective tissue can have a few fat cells, or there can be a perinephric fat in the kidney. But the parenchymal cells of the organs do not contain fat. Causes of steatosis, different causes हैं. For example, exposure to toxins, protein malnutrition, diabetes mellitus. Diabetes mellitus is one of the major causes of steatosis or fatty change. Anoxia. Anoxia disturbs all the metabolism and obesity. Toxins, protein malnutrition, diabetes mellitus, anoxia, obesity, these are the major causes of steatosis. Thirdly, from examination point of view, these intracellular accumulations are very important, and you are frequently asked about the causes of steatosis and changes, and how the catabolism can cause these changes. So this is the liver, and free fatty acids are taken up by the liver. In a normal working liver, or in a normal parenchyma of the liver, free fatty acids are catabolized, and these by different enzymes and help of different substrates are converted into different metabolites. So for example, by the inclusion of acetate, it is converted into fatty acids are converted into cholesterol esters. Fatty acids help in the formation of phospholipids, and fatty acids are converted or oxidized to ketone bodies, and carbon dioxide is formed. Fatty acids are also converted to triglycerides, which are then taken up by the apoproteins, or a combination of apoproteins, transportproteins, and triglycerides occur in the form of lipoproteins, and then these are taken up outside from the liver. But if there is any problem in all this metabolism or uptake or removal, this can lead to fatty change or steatosis. Mechanisms of steatosis include CCl4, carbon tetrachloride, and protein malnutrition, in which there is a decreased synthesis of the apoproteins. And if the synthesis of apoprotein is reduced, then there will be increased level of triglycerides, because apoproteins along with the triglycerides are converted into the lipoproteins, and then they are taken up by the removed from the liver or taken up by the other organs. Anoxia inhibits oxidation, and these are not converted to ketone bodies, and free radicals are formed. These free radicals can cause damage and formation of the, and can burdenize the oxidative metabolism of the cell as well. Starvation increases fatty acid mobilization for energy purposes of the cell, and this increased fatty acid mobilization can lead to steatosis. Outcomes of steatosis can be mild, and if these are mild, then there is no effect on the cellular function and can be reversed. But if the steatosis gets severe, and then it can affect the cell function and it can impair the cell functions. So how it affects the morphology or normal structure of the organ. Steatosis, when occurs, clear vacuoles appear in the parenchymal cells. Because fat is dissolved during preparation of the tissue. So clear vacuoles, as in the fatty tissue, appear in the parenchyma of the organ. And these clear vacuoles are representative of fatty change. For example, one of the major examples and most frequent is the fatty change is the liver. And this fatty change occurs because of accumulation of fat into the parenchyma of the liver, because of CCl4 poisoning, malnutrition, and diabetes mellitus above all. In gross, with the naked eye, the size of the liver is enlarged. Uh, Liver is enlarged, and it can be even palpated from the abdomen. If you see it from the on the naked eye, it is increasingly yellow appearance. Otherwise, the color of the liver is dark brown, reddish brown, or dark brown. And with the steatosis or fatty change, it becomes increasingly yellow. It looks soft and appears very greasy, as well as greasy to touch. Normal weight of the liver is 1 to 1.5 kilogram, but it can weigh about 3 to 6 kg. So the size or weight of the liver becomes almost double. So steatosis badly affects the size of the liver. On microscopy, you can find minute membrane bound inclusions. These inclusions are called liposomes, and these clear vacuoles can form larger vacuoles, and even these can lead to the formation of fatty cells. Here you can see that this is the naked eye appearance or gross of the liver, and the liver, the color of the liver is about yellowish or orangish in color, And here in the margins you can clearly see yellowish streaks are forming, and the color is changed from dark brown to the yellow appearing, and this is appearing greasy and smooth and greasy, but as well as the liver size is increased. On cut section, you can see huge quantity of fat is present in the parenchyma of the liver. This all yellow, greasy appearing substance is basically accumulation of the fat or fatty change, and hepatocytes are compressed in between these fat vacuoles. If you stay in the slide with the HNE, then you can appreciate these are the remained hepatocytes, and these are clear fat vacuoles. The fat vacuoles are rounded in shape and have different sizes, from very small size or micro vacuole to they have a larger size, or because these microvacuoles they accumulate and they mix up with each other and they form larger vacuoles. So in the liver, you can find these clear vacuoles of the fat which are appearing in between the hepatocytes. In the heart, uniformly affected myocytes can be seen in the myocardium, and this can also be giving an appearance which is called Tigard effect. Tigard effect is basically because of alternating bands of affected myocardium and unaffected myocardium. Unaffected myocardium appears brownish in color, while the affected myocardium appears yellowish in color. So this alternating effect is basically called Tigard effect. So cholesterol and cholesterol esters can accumulate, and these can be in the form of atherosclerosis. Cholesterol and cholesterol esters can accumulate in the form of xanthomas. These accumulations can cause inflammations and necrosis, as well as cholesterolysis. So cholesterol and cholesterol esters can be causing atherosclerosis, xanthoma formation. These can lead to inflammations and necrosis and cholesterolysis. Atherosclerosis is basically in the blood vessels, and here the macrophages which have taken up cholesterol or cholesterol esters are accumulated in between the smooth muscle cells. Here you can see these are different smooth muscle cells, and in between are present macrophages or foamy cells which have a single nucleus in the center, and it has taken up cholesterol or fats and appears as foamy. So atherosclerosis occurs in the blood vessels where the atheromatous plaques are formed, and these atheromatous plaques are containing cholesterol and cholesterol esters. Xanthomas are basically accumulation of cholesterol and esters in subcutaneous tissue. So the foamy macrophages, they take up extra quantity of fats, and they get accumulated into the subcutaneous tissue. And this type of accumulation is called xanthoma. These can lead to inflammations and necrosis, and cholesterolysis, that is accumulation of fatty macrophages usually in the gallbladder. This can be called as cholesterolysis. This is example of atherosclerosis, and here you can see xanthoma in the subcutaneous tissue, which is basically accumulation of fat. Similarly, the protein metabolism or disturbed protein metabolism can also lead to intracellular accumulation. Intracellular accumulation of proteins, it appears as eosinophilic droplets. Eosinophilic droplets mean pinkish amorphous droplets. This can also be in the form of vacuoles or aggregates in the cytoplasm. So proteins appear intracellular accumulations, and these appear usually in the form of eosinophilic droplets or in the form of vacuoles or aggregates in the myocardium. Here, this is a cut section from the kidney, and this is kidney tubule. This is another kidney tubule, and this is another kidney tubule. And similarly, these are also kidney tubules, which are appearing more darker, more pinkish, and more granular. If you appreciate, these are more granular and more dark and eosinophilic. These are because of accumulation of the proteins inside the kidney tubules. For example, if a patient is suffering from proteinuria, or its urine is or its protein for some reasons is being excreted through the kidney into the urine, which is not a normal feature. It is a feature of a syndrome, proteinuria, of a syndrome, nephrotic syndrome. And the patient is excreting normal proteins because of some defects in the glomerular basement membrane. So when these abnormal proteins, they are overloaded, they start accumulating inside the kidney tubules. And the kidney tubules, they appear as containing lots of proteins inside their cytoplasm, and these protein aggregates appears as protein droplets, which are dark pink and granular, and they affect the whole of the kidney tubules. These are normal kidney tubules which are not overloaded, but these kidney tubules are overloaded with the accumulation of the proteins, or these are because of proteinuria, that the protein droplets are present inside the kidney tubules. There are different causes for accumulation of proteins inside the cytoplasm. This can be proteinuria. Proteinuria is causing reabsorption droplets in the proximal tubules. I told you, if the patient is suffering some problem in the glomerular basement membrane, or reabsorption problem, for example, in the nephrotic syndrome, where the slits of the glomerular basement membrane are large open, the patient loses its normal protein, which should not be a constituent of the urine, and these proteins are lost in the urine. But when the kidney is unable to cope with so much quantity of proteins, the proteins start accumulating inside the kidney tubules in the form of protein droplets, and these protein droplets, they appear as pinkish, homogeneous, dark granules in the substance of the tubules. And if there is excessive synthesis of normal secretory proteins, then the proteins can be accumulated inside the cell. Or if there is some defect in the protein folding, defective intracellular transport and secretion of critical protein, endoplasmic reticulum stress induced by unfolded and misfolded proteins, and aggregation of abnormal proteins. These all mechanisms leads to misfolded protein accumulation inside the cell. For example, Mallory bodies or Mallory-Denk bodies are hyaline. It is an inclusion found in the cytoplasm of liver cells. Mallory bodies are damaged intermediate filaments within the liver cells. Here you can see this is a ballooning hepatocyte or a damaging hepatocyte, and this twisted rope appearance, this twisted rope-like appearance inside or around the nucleus inside the cytoplasm is basically a Mallory body. What leads to accumulation of misfolded proteins is basically when there is a translation, transcription of messenger RNA, there is a formation of proteins by the ribosomes. And if there is any problem with the folding of the proteins or protein formation, these proteins are taken up by the chaperones and heat shock proteins. And these repair this protein and convert it into mature folded mitochondrial protein, and these mature folded proteins are taken up for the synthesis of different materials. But if there is some damage in the protein, if there is some damage in the folding or there is some damage in the repair, then the proteins are taken up by the chaperones, but these are not repaired. And then another mechanism in the cell is proteasome, which takes up the ubiquitin proteasome pathway, which takes up the misfolded and damaged proteins and degrade it into different smaller peptide. But if this mechanism is overloaded, then these misfolded proteins or damaged proteins start accumulating inside the cell and cause endoplasmic reticulum stress. Hyaline change. What is hyaline change? Hyaline change is accumulation or alteration within the cell or in the extracellular space, which give the cell a homogeneous, glassy pink appearance. And this homogeneous, main feature is homogeneous and glassy pink appearance. This homogeneous glassy pink appearance can be in the form of reabsorption droplets or Russell bodies or Mallory alcoholic hyaline. Russell bodies occur in the endoplasmic reticulum. Here you can see this is a normal tissue, and in this normal tissue, this is hyaline change, which is dark, pink, and homogeneous appearing. This type of change is called hyaline change. Hyaline change is an important feature in the kidney, and this becomes more prominent with the periodic acid Schiff stain, which is also called PA stain. Here you can see this is kidney tubule, and this is the basement membrane of the kidney tubule, and here this pinkish appearing area is basically the hyaline change. This is another area of the hyaline change. Here you can see this is Bowman capsule, and this is glomerulus, and inside the substance of the glomerulus you can see hyaline change, which is appearing as pink amorphous proteinaceous area, and this change is called hyaline change. Glycogen can be accumulated inside the cell. Glycogen appears as clear vacuoles within the cytoplasm. In the cytoplasm, if there are clear vacuoles, these can be formed by three reasons. One reason is accumulation of water, and other reason for clear vacuole is accumulation of fat, and other reason, third reason can be accumulation of the glycogen. If we want to differentiate in an, that what type of clear vacuole is existing, we stain it with Sudan 4. If it is positive or it stains with Sudan 4, then it is accumulation of the fat. And for glycogen, we stain it with the PAS, periodic acid Schiff stain. And if it is stained pinkish, then it means this is accumulation of the glycogen. And if the clear vacuoles remain as a clear vacuole after all these two stains, then it is accumulation of the water inside the cytoplasm. Glycogen can be accumulated in diabetes mellitus or glycogen storage diseases. Then another major group of components which accumulate inside the cell are pigments. You must be very well aware of pigments. Pigments can be exogenous, that is the pigment taken up from the outer source. For example, coal dust or stone dust, which occurs in the miners which work with the silica. And there can be metals which can accumulate inside the cell, but the major and most common are the coal dust. Endogenous pigments can be iron containing pigments. Different routes of exogenous pigments. Exogenous pigments are the ones which we take up from the outer side environment, which are not part of our normal body metabolism. And these exogenous pigments are not produced inside the body. Routes, different routes for the intake of exogenous pigments can be ingestion of the exogenous pigment, or inhalation, or through inhalation, for example, carbon particles or dust particles or coal dust we take with the inhalation. Or there can be injection of the exogenous pigments. For example, in tattooing, we take injections of different pigments, which then become a permanent part of the body. So exogenous pigments through ingestion, chronic ingestion of metals such as silver. This can lead to, or lead can lead to plumbism, or give skin a metallic hue. Blue line appear on the gums due to interaction between lead and hydrogen sulfide. Excessive intake of carrots leads to yellowish red skin pigmentation. This is also called carotene deposition. Exogenous pigmentation. Through inhalation, we take carbon particles or silica particles. Silica particles in the workers, and carbon particles, they appear as black and are present in the environment. For example, here you see this is trachea, and these are lungs. And on the lungs, you can find dark brown to blackish pigment. This pigment is basically the carbon particle or carbon dust or coal particles. And this condition is called anthracosis. Here you can see in the structure of the alveoli, you can find different macrophages. And these macrophages, they are appearing dark black in color because they have ingested this exogenous pigment. And this condition is called anthracosis. On naked eye, you can find these black lines, and these are basically accumulations of different carbon particles which are along the surface of the lung. Similarly, this is a cut section from different parts of the alveoli, and here you can see loads of these carbon particles, and these are melanin. These are different macrophages which has taken up quantities or are trying to ingest this extra exogenous particle, and they become embedded in the substance of the lung. This is another picture of anthracosis, and these are macrophages which have taken up and are full of carbon particle. Exogenous pigment can be taken up by the injections. For example, in tattooing, we inject in the subcutaneous tissue different dyes, and these dyes or pigments are taken up by the macrophages, which are the local resident part of that area. And these residents, they are the permanent resident of the skin, and they keep their fixed, and so these dyes, they stay and the tattoo does not disturb, but it becomes a permanent part of the body. So by injections, we take up different pigments for tattooing. For example, this is the epidermis and this is the dermis. And just beneath these are pigment fixed macrophages, because macrophages are found fixed in the connective tissue. And these macrophages, when they are take up or when they ingest this extra dye, they remain fixed in the tissue, and the tattoo does not disappear, so it becomes a permanent part of the body, and with normal measures it cannot be removed. So inside fixed macrophages, pigment present inside fixed macrophages is basically a cause of the tattooing. There are different endogenous pigments as well, which are produced inside the body by different metabolisms. For example, melanin. Melanin is a normal pigment which is found in the form of brown granules in the skin and choroid of eye, adrenal medulla, and sometimes in the meninges. It is produced from the tyrosine. When the enzyme tyrosinase enzyme act, then the melanin is produced. Local melanin pigmentation occurs in the tumors of melanocytes of the skin or choroid coat of the eye. Melanin is generalized melanin pigmentation occurs in the Addison's disease and chloasma and ultraviolet radiation exposure. Otherwise, melanin is just responsible for the normal skin complexion. In the darker skin, there is more melanin pigment present, and in the lighter or fair skin pigment, the melanocytes are less in number, so melanin is produced less. Another pigment is the lipofuscin pigment or lipochrome pigment. This pigment is also called wear and tear pigment, and this is a telltale sign of the aging. Wear and tear pigments mean that during life, when we are exposed to different toxins or different metabolites, this wear and tear pigment lipofuscin is basically end product of membrane lipid peroxidation, and it is produced inside the cell and it gets accumulated into the cell. And quantity of this lipofuscin pigment basically tells us how much exposure we have been through, or with the age, lipofuscin, which is insoluble pigment, with the age it accumulates more into the inside the cell. So yellow brown finely granular pigment which is present around the nucleus. Here you can see this is cardiac muscle, and in the cardiac myocyte, which you all know that cardiac myocytes are branching myocytes. Here you can appreciate striations and branching of this cardiac cell. And inside the cardiac cell, nucleus is present, and perinuclear area. Perinuclear area means the area around the nucleus. This lipofuscin pigment can be found in the cardiac cells, but usually it is around the nucleus. It is present around the nucleus. So perinuclear area of the cardiac cell, if there is light brown pigment which is present around the nucleus in the cardiac muscle, it is basically a lipofuscin pigment. So it is perinuclear and intralysosomal in location, and it is present around the nucleus. Its location makes it different from the hemosiderin pigment, which also is brownish in color. This is electron microscopic picture. You can find striations of the cardiac muscle over here, and this is the nucleus. This area is the nucleus, and just around the nucleus you can find aggregates of a lipofuscin pigment. You can find multiple aggregates of lipofuscin pigment. So lipofuscin pigment is basically a wear and tear pigment. It is a benign pigment. It does not harm the cell. It is a telltale sign. With aging it is produced, or with exposure to different toxins, this pigment is accumulated inside the cell, and it accumulates inside the cell around the nucleus. So around the nucleus, the pigment is accumulated, and this is lipofuscin pigment which appears brownish in color, and the location is very typical around the nucleus, especially in the cardiac myocytes. Hemosiderin is another pigment. Hemosiderin, as you all know, that it is iron containing pigment, and it is produced by the breakdown of the red blood cells and hemoglobin, and it consists of aggregates of ferritin micelles. It is stored in cells in association with the protein apoferritin. So you can see smaller brownish aggregates inside the cell. These smaller brownish aggregates of the pigment is basically hemosiderin. So what makes it different from lipofuscin pigment is basically the location. This is distributed all around in the cytoplasm of the cell, whereas the lipofuscin pigment was present around the nucleus in a perinuclear location. This is a Prussian blue stain, and you can see in the similar section, you can see darkish blue areas, and these darkish blue appearing areas are basically the hemosiderin aggregates. Hemosiderin aggregates can be in different conditions. Different conditions can lead to hemosiderin aggregates. These include local hemosiderosis, systemic hemosiderosis, or hemochromatosis. Local hemosiderosis is basically local deposition of hemosiderin, and it results from hemorrhage into the tissues. So just a bruise, just a hemorrhage in the tissue can lead to local hemosiderosis. Systemic hemosiderosis is generalized hemosiderin deposition without tissue or organ damage, and this occurs in the hemorrhage, multiple blood transfusions, or hemolysis. Hemochromatosis is a disease which occurs due to damage to many tissues and organs, scarring and organ dysfunction, manifested as hepatic cirrhosis, fibrosis, and pancreas and increased skin pigmentation. And this is a hereditary disorder characterized by increased iron absorption. Bilirubin is a normal major pigment. It is found in the bile, and it is derived from the hemoglobin. Hemoglobin metabolism leads to bilirubin production, and it contains no iron. It stains the blood, the sclera, and the mucosa, internal organs, and produces a yellowish discoloration of the skin, sclera, or the mucosa. Then comes the calcification. Calcification can occur as extracellular, and calcification can be intracellular. Calcification of the tissues means that the calcium deposits are deposited in such tissues where the calcium deposits are not required. So in the body, mineralization or calcification or calcium is stored in the bones. The normal connective tissue or other forms of connective tissue rather than bone does not contain calcium deposits. So these are different pathological conditions which lead to calcium deposits into the different organs or the tissues. Calcification can be of two types: dystrophic calcification and metastatic calcification. In dystrophic calcification, the dead tissues, basically if there is some necrosis in any part of the body, for example, in the valve of the heart or in the blood vessel or anywhere, if there is necrosis and the dead tissue are present, then dystrophic calcification occurs. The other form is metastatic calcification. In metastatic calcification, there is abnormal homeostasis of calcium metabolism, and this abnormal calcification metabolism leads to higher serum levels of the calcium, and the higher serum levels of calcium cause accumulation of calcium into different normal organs or the tissues. So in dystrophic calcification, the dead tissue accumulates calcium, but the serum calcium levels or metabolism of the calcium is normal. So there is no problem with the serum calcium level, or there is no problem with the calcium metabolism, but the dead tissues or the necrotic tissues or damaged tissues, they cause accumulation of that calcium inside the organ. But in metastatic calcification, there is increased serum level of the calcium, and this increased serum level of the calcium leads to accumulation of calcium into different organs or tissues and different normal organs and tissues. So increased secretion of parathyroid hormone, for example, in hyperparathyroidism due to parathyroid tumors, can lead to accumulation of calcium or metastatic calcification. Ectopic secretion of parathyroid hormone related protein by malignant tumors. This is basically not parathyroid hormone, but protein which is similar in structure to parathyroid hormone. So it functions in the similar way and causes excessive secretion of the parathyroid hormone, which causes a lytic effect on the bones, and a serum level of the calcium is increased. Destruction of bone tissue. Destruction of the bone tissue, which can be secondary to primary tumors of the bone marrow. For example, multiple myeloma, leukemias, different other tumors which get metastasis into the skeletal tissues. For example, breast cancers, or bone turnover is increased in the Paget's disease, immobilization. So anything which leads to destruction of the bone tissue can cause excessive release of calcium from the bone, and this calcium gets deposited into the tissues because of higher levels of the calcium. Vitamin D related disorders, including vitamin D intoxication, sarcoidosis, in which macrophages activate vitamin D precursor, idiopathic hypercalcemia of infancy, Williams syndrome. This can also lead to metastatic calcification. So dystrophic calcification, which is accumulation of calcium into the dead tissues, calcification in the previously damaged tissues, despite that the calcium metabolism of the person is normal and there is a normal level of the calcium, normal serum level of the calcium in the person. So the calcium gets deposited into the areas of old trauma, tuberculous lesions. For example, if a person was having tuberculosis or lymph node or other area was affected, then that affected area can accumulate calcium. Scarred heart valves or atherosclerotic lesions can also be a source of dystrophic calcification. Here you can see a blood vessel. This is the tunica intima, which is lining, blood vessel lining endothelium. And this is adventitia, and this is media. The media of or the muscle layer, tunica intima, tunica media, tunica adventitia, and tunica media, which is the muscle layer of the blood vessel. It is showing a darker color, darker purplish color because of calcification. And the calcium is deposited into the tunica media because there have been some damage because of the plaque formation. This is another blood vessel. This is, you can see, this is lumen of the blood vessel, and this is erythematous plaque, which is present in the wall of the blood vessel. And this plaque formation has led to the accumulation of calcification. So this is pathological calcification or dystrophic calcification in the dead tissue of the blood vessel. Here you can see in a major blood vessel, tunica intima, tunica media, and this is the area of calcification which is present inside the media. Tunica media is badly affected by calcification. This is due to damage to the tunica media, or dystrophic or necrotic cells are present here. And despite normal levels of calcium, the tunica media has accumulated calcium deposits. In the tumors, other examples include formation of the smoma bodies. For smoma bodies are basically concreted, lamellated structures which are present in different tumors. For example, papillary carcinoma of the thyroid and meningiomas. This is also accumulation of calcium in the dystrophic calcification. So I think this is enough for today. Any questions?